I slipped out to the balcony a little past midnight, just to hear the wind and quiet my thoughts. My neighbor Benjamin noticed my light and came over with 2 steaming mugs. We started with small talk. We ended up sharing the kind of truths people usually keep in locked drawers. And then he did something on that balcony I never expected, something so gentle and brave it changed the way I think about second chances. Before I begin, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from, and I read every single one. The night had that silvered after-midnight hush our building gets when the TV sets finally go dark and the freight train out past the river is the only loud thing left. I was in my robe and old slippers, the ones with a threadbare heel, feet propped on the rail. The air smelled like cut grass and someone's late laundry, warm and soapy. All day I had held my breath through meetings and emails, and the kind of phone calls where you nod even when no one can see you. At 49, I'm better at keeping a straight face than I ever was, but the truth is it still costs me. That's why I come out here. The balcony doesn't ask for anything but time. Across the courtyard, a porch light flicked on. Benjamin's. He lives 1 floor down and over, close enough that we wave when we pass in the parking lot, but far enough that I don't know how he takes his coffee. He's the neighbor you borrow a ladder from, the one who keeps spare AA batteries. Quiet. Solid. Sometimes I catch him out early on Saturdays, kneeling in the narrow strip of soil by the fence, coaxing tomatoes into doing what he wants with a patience I envy. I didn't call to him. I just let my eyes drift, the way you do when you don't want to make a decision. But a minute later, I heard the soft clink of a gate, and then his steps on the stairs, measured and unhurried. He appeared by my railing with 2 mugs, and that careful half-smile people wear when they're not sure if they're interrupting. Couldn't sleep, he said. I made chamomile. Thought maybe you could use one. It was such a simple kindness that my throat stung. I made room beside me on the little bench and pulled my robe tighter. Thank you, I said. You read me right. Is it all right if I sit for a bit, he asked. Only if you want the company. I do, I said, and I meant it. He folded himself into the corner, leaving a respectful palm's width between us, the sort of distance that says I'm here, not pushing. Steam feathered up from the mugs. He cupped his with both hands, warming them. In the glow from my balcony light, I could see the silver in his beard, the laugh lines that took the edge off his seriousness. A train horn wailed, far and soft. We let it pass through. We started with the weather, because that's the law of small talk, and then edged into jokes about the building's ancient elevator and how it seems to stop on every floor when you're late. He told me about the squirrel that keeps burying peanuts in his herb planters. I told him about the tenant above me who line dances to old country music every Wednesday night. We laughed quietly. We sipped. Silence, when it came, didn't feel like a test. It felt like a blanket. He set his mug down and glanced toward my living room, where a stack of framed family photos leans against the wall waiting for me to choose a place to hang them. Are those your kids? He asked, a gentle tilt in his voice. Grown, I said. Busy, generous, opinionated. It was easier to talk about them than about me, but somehow talking about them led to me anyway. He asked the kind of questions that don't skip ahead. He's good at that. I told him I used to think happiness would arrive like a delivery at the door. Signed for, unpacked, obvious. But these days it shows up sideways. Good coffee. A text from my daughter that just says I heard this song and thought of you. The way the breeze finds my neck at exactly the right moment. And apparently chamomile at midnight. He nodded. My version is a fresh tomato still warm from the sun. Also, when the baseball announcer falls quiet between pitches and you can hear the crowd breathe. That space. Do you know what I mean?" I did. I said so. We sat in that shared understanding a while, watching the dark move over the courtyard. "I don't talk like this much," I said finally. "I'm usually on. Useful. A problem-solving machine. The balcony is the only place I let the machine cool down." He turned just enough to meet my eyes. "Thank you for letting me sit by the machine while it rests," he said, softly enough that the words landed like a blanket instead of a weight. "If at any moment you want me to go, say the word, and I'll head downstairs. I don't want to overstay." "You're not overstaying," I said. "Stay." Something in the way I said it must have told him the truth, because he settled more fully against the bench, still careful, still leaving that palm's width. His shoulder relaxed. Mine did too. We talked about the little things that carried big meanings when you've lived enough to notice them. The perfect pen. The old song you only realize you know all the words to when the chorus hits. The way a place can feel like it remembers you, even if you've changed. He told me he'd moved here after a difficult divorce. He didn't share details. I didn't ask. What mattered was the shape of the story, the way he kept choosing decency in the aftermath. I told him I had been married a long time and then wasn't. I said it without bitterness and surprised myself. That felt new. Wind moved through the pines along the sidewalk, a thin hush. The building creaked, settling. A bug flickered in the yellow circle of my balcony light. Benjamin glanced toward the dark courtyard, then back at me, and I knew he wanted to say something weightier than baseball or tomatoes. "Can I tell you something without it being weird?" he said. "You can tell me anything. If it is weird, we will call it weird together." He smiled at that. "I keep an eye on that light of yours," he said, nodding toward my balcony bulb. "When it's on late, I think, Samantha couldn't sleep. I don't do anything about it. I just notice. And sometimes I put on a pot of tea and wait 10 minutes and see if the noticing turns into an excuse to come up here and ask if you want a mug. This is the first time I worked up the courage to climb the stairs. No one had admitted something like that to me in a long time, if ever. It wasn't possessive or dramatic. It felt like a neighbor who sees you as a person worth looking after. A courtesy. A small, old-fashioned chivalry. "I'm glad you did," I said. And I meant that too. He picked at a fleck on his mug, nervous now that he turned his pockets out in the quiet. He cleared his throat. "There's another thing," he said. "At the risk of telling you too much, I have this old portable radio. Not fancy. It picks up an AM station that plays the songs my mother loved when she cleaned the kitchen. Sometimes, when sleep won't come, I turn it on and let those songs remind me that life has held me gently before, and might again." He looked like he wanted to offer me the moon, but would settle for offering me a chorus. I surprised us both. "Do you have it with you?" He blinked. "The radio?" "Yeah. I brought it in my hoodie pocket in case the moment was right." He laughed quietly at himself. I didn't think I'd actually take it out. "Would you," I asked, "if it's all right with you, turn it on? We can keep it low. I like the idea of hearing something that holds you like that." He asked with his eyes first, then with words. "Are you sure? If at any point it feels like too much, I'll turn it off. Say the word." I nodded. "Please." He set his mug on the little table, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a scuffed black radio with a silver dial and a tiny antenna that stuck up like a curious finger. He thumbed the wheel, and the speaker offered a wash of static, followed by a warm, wobbly trumpet and a woman's voice from another century. It sounded like a room you'd stayed in once, long ago, where the window faced a lake. The volume was barely above a whisper. It was enough. We didn't speak for a while. We just let the music turn the balcony into a small dance hall. Somewhere between the second and third song, a breeze lifted the hair at my neck, and I felt the urge to stand, to sway a little, to let my body remember something my mind had filed away under not necessary. I set my mug down and rose. Benjamin watched me with a question on his face. "I can sit back down," he said immediately, "or go. Your call." "Don't go," I said, "and don't sit. Come stand with me, if you'd like. We can just be awkward together." His relief was quiet but visible. He stood, keeping the palm's width distance even now. The radio crooned a slow rhythm. I swayed, barely. He matched me barely. Two people anchored to a small square of concrete 5 floors up, letting an old song loosen something that had grown too tight. "May I," he asked, "offer you my hand? If it's not comfortable, say no. I won't be offended." I looked at his hand. It was work rough, clean, steady. I placed my fingers in his. We kept it simple, a slow side to side, like married couples do under string lights in backyards at the end of a summer party. It felt almost ceremonial, like we were promising to be gentle with the next 5 minutes. We weren't performing for anyone. The only audience was the potted fern, the sleeping apartments, and the faraway train. "I didn't see this coming," I said. "Me neither," he said. "But I'm grateful for it. And I want you to know, if any part of this makes you uneasy, we can stop. No explanations required." I squeezed his hand, a quiet yes. The radio slipped into a tune I half remembered, and my throat caught. "My mother used to hum this while she folded towels," I said, surprised at the memory. I hadn't thought about it in years. He smiled, soft. "Then this is a good one to be standing still for." Time is strange in moments like that. It stretches and thins and curls back on itself. I noticed things I wouldn't have if I'd been hurrying. The tiny chip in his thumbnail, the way our shadows overlapped on the wall, the exact note the singer held before the chorus. When the song ended, he let my hand go before I had to decide whether to let go myself. The courtesy of it made my eyes warm. We sat again, a little closer now, but still careful. The radio whispered. He told me he was learning to build birdhouses in his workshop because after the divorce, he needed to make something with a beginning and an end. I told him I write lists I never intend to finish, just to feel the comfort of an order that doesn't mind being disobeyed. He laughed. "You and I might be on the same team," he said. "Maybe we are," I said. We were quiet then. The good kind of quiet. The kind where you can hear your life making room for a new piece without scraping anything else you value. It was late enough that the first birds were fussing lightly in the hedge when Benjamin glanced toward my sliding door. "I should get out of your hair," he said, but he didn't stand. Instead, he inhaled, as if deciding whether to risk something. "May I make a strange request?" "Go on." "Would you sometime let me cook you dinner on my balcony? Nothing fancy, just what I know. Grilled chicken. Those tomatoes I keep trying to convince to behave. And that radio, if you want it. If not, silence is fine too. If you'd rather never, that's also fine. I don't want you to feel cornered by a neighbor with a radio and opinions about herbs." He had a way of laying out choices like a deck of cards. Face up, no tricks. I looked at him and saw not just the man in front of me, but the life he built after something hard, a life steady enough to leave a light on for someone else to notice. My answer rose without ceremony. "I'd like that," I said. "Not tonight, but soon." He nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if any louder a response might startle the moment. "Thank you," he said. And then, with the same courtesy he'd shown all night, "Would it be all right if I walked you just to your door? I don't want to intrude. I just want to make sure you get in, and then I'll head down." "Yes," I said. "Walk me to the door." We stood. He turned the radio off and slid it back into his pocket, as if tucking the night safely away. On the threshold, I reached for the handle and paused. The words that came were unscripted, and yes, a little unbelievable for someone who'd sworn to keep her defenses neat and polished. "Benjamin," I said, "I'm glad you watched for my light." He held my gaze, steady but gentle. "I'm glad you left it on." The lock clicked. The door slid open. The night breathed against my back. And that is where I will leave you for now, because what happened next belongs to the continuation of this story, to the part where the balcony's quiet follows us inside and asks us both what we're willing to learn about ourselves. When I closed the sliding door behind me that night, I didn't expect to hear Benjamin's footsteps on the stairs again so soon. But 2 evenings later, my balcony light burned late, and just like before, there he was, steady, unhurried, carrying something small in his hands. This time, not mugs, but a shallow wooden box with grooves along its sides. He held it almost sheepishly, like a child presenting a school project. I was already outside, arms wrapped around myself against the soft chill, my thoughts wandering to places I rarely let them. He raised the box a little as he reached the railing. "I thought you might like to see what I've been working on," he said. His voice carried the hesitance of someone who debated for a long time before deciding to share. I invited him in with a tilt of my head. "Show me." He set the box between us on the bench. Inside, nestled on a soft cloth, were tiny wooden pieces, birdhouses in miniature, no bigger than my hand. Each had a different roofline. One pointed like a church steeple, another slanted as if leaning into the wind. "Practice," he explained. "I cut the wrong sizes, so instead of wasting the wood, I made these. Useless, maybe, but I like how they turned out." I traced a finger lightly over the smooth edge of one. "They're not useless," I said. "They're beautiful. You gave scraps another story." He smiled then, not with his mouth but with his whole face, the kind of smile that slips past defenses. "That's kind of what I'm trying to do with myself." The words landed heavier than the night air. We sat with them, letting silence do the work of acknowledgement. A neighbor, a man I'd known by little more than polite nods, was revealing his rawest truth in the space of 2 evenings. And here I was realizing that my own scraps, dreams I'd folded away, pieces of me I convinced myself were too jagged, might deserve another story too. The radio appeared again, like an old friend. He kept it low, the kind of volume where the music is more breath than sound. A song hummed through, strings and a woman's voice, low and velvet. He didn't ask this time if I wanted it. He just turned the dial carefully, giving me the chance to say no. I didn't. We leaned back, shoulders close enough that warmth bowled across the narrow space between us. He asked, "Do you ever feel like the world expects you to keep going without stopping, no matter how tired you are?" I laughed, a sound that wasn't really humor. "All the time. But sometimes, when I stop, I'm scared of what I'll hear in the quiet." And tonight? His question was soft, a hand extended. "Tonight," I said, "the quiet feels less like judgment and more like permission." He nodded, maybe because it isn't just yours anymore. Something in me stirred at that. I looked at him, really looked, and noticed the way his hands rested, not fidgeting, just patient. His presence felt like a safe harbor, not a demand. I realized how rare that had become in my life. The minutes stretched into an hour. We talked about things you don't usually say to someone who lives one floor down. Regrets that linger, joys too small to share at the dinner table, the ache of wanting to be seen for more than your role. He told me about nights he'd sit in his kitchen, wondering if solitude was strength or just loneliness in disguise. I admitted I'd been afraid to let anyone in too close since the day my marriage ended, afraid they'd see the cracks I'd polished over. Benjamin listened without interruption. When I faltered, he waited. When I rambled, he steadied the pace. Not once did he push for more than I wanted to give. Respect wrapped around every word, every silence. The radio drifted into another old tune, and without thinking, I reached out and touched his arm. A small touch, nothing more, but it was enough to send a current through both of us. He froze, not out of fear but of carefulness, as though the moment might shatter if he moved too fast. His eyes searched mine, asking the question he didn't voice. "Yes," I whispered, answering what he hadn't asked aloud. His hand covered mine then, warm and sure. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend this was something it wasn't. It was two people, long past the games of youth, standing on a balcony in the middle of an ordinary night, discovering something extraordinary. The kind of connection that doesn't demand fireworks. It glows steady, like a lamp you didn't realize you needed until the room darkened. He leaned closer, so close I could feel his breath feather against my cheek. He paused there long enough for me to know he would wait forever if I needed him to. And in that pause, I felt choice settle in my chest, not pressure, but freedom. I tilted my head just slightly, closing the space between us. It wasn't the kiss of young lovers rushing through infatuation. It was slow, reverent, as if both of us understood what it meant to open the door to trust again. His lips were warm, steady, asking and never taking. I answered gently, with all the care of a woman who has lived enough to know what matters. When we parted,